Greetings, folks. Welcome back to the channel. I have been away for a little bit. As I think I mentioned on my last update with the terrible audio. Sorry about that. I'm trying to work on that. Not a professional YouTuber. As I mentioned on my last update, my parents were coming to town. So, did a little bit of hanging out with the Rents. Mother's Day happened. My son's second birthday happened. So, stuff's been going on. I've acquired some stuff, not as much in the way of music that I usually acquire, but I'm going to talk about a few recent pickups for music and video games, because I want to talk about video games. First off, we're listening to part of a VCLT package sent to me by Eli, Dark Hymns from the Cold North, my buddy from the West Coast. This is Chaosbringer with Turn into Ruins. This band really likes Bolt Thrower a lot. Not a straight clone, but pretty close. I'd say they have a lot of the gristle and grit of War Master and Realm of Chaos, but kind of more the mid-paced plod of the records that came after. The vocals are really impressive in particular on this. He's definitely got that Willits, regal, commanding sort of war growl down pat. Next up is something I bought on eBay a while ago. I got the full length by Insanity on CD a little while back. I mentioned it in a pickups video, and this demo wasn't too bad. I think it was like 10 bucks or something, maybe 12 bucks. Unholiness Rising, this was a PA, kind of brutal in the 90s sense, death metal band. Very good. If you're a fan of early Suffocation and Rotravor, stuff of that ilk, this would probably appeal to you. It gets kind of technical at certain points, but it's definitely got that wonderful 90s death metal demo sound to it. I'm sure this is up on Ken's Death Metal Crypt, and it fits very well with a lot of stuff that's up there. Just technical enough, like I said. Brutal and slamming, verging upon that sort of thing, at the very genesis of that sort of sound, but there's also almost kind of thrashy and even hardcore-ish elements to it. It's an excellent demo. And if you can get your hands on a copy, I recommend it. If not, definitely pull it up on YouTube if you like death metal. Unholiness Rising by Insanity. Finally, for cassettes, this I just kind of picked up on a whim because it was cheap. I've looked at the vinyl version. It's a little bit out of my price range right now. I've been meaning to pick something up by this band on a physical format for a while. This is Sacrilege with Too Cool to Pray. This came out on Medusa Records in 1988. This is a Bay Area thrash band, kind of different from a lot of other bands from that scene and from that area. Their first album, Party with God, which I've listened to extensively but don't own a copy of, is very straight down the line crossover kind of stuff, you know, along the lines of Cryptic Slaughter, mid-period DRI, you know, the usual suspects for West Coast crossover kind of sound, Wehrmacht, you know, that kind of thing. This is when they kind of expand a little bit and get a little bit more technical. Parallels can be made between like this second record and DBC's second record, Universe, and even the first couple of Sabbath records with their third record, Morning is Broken, although that's not really the best example because I don't really care for that third Sabbath record. Sabbath UK is the one I'm talking about. This, you know, they get a little bit better at playing their instruments on this, and the songwriting's a little bit more kind of fleshed out, I suppose, but it's still great, fun thrash with a punk edge. At the end of the day, songs are a bit longer, but it's good. If you like any of the aforementioned bands that I've rattled off, this is definitely not to be avoided. They were originally on, this is a split release actually between Medusa, Alchemy Records, and Ever Records, it looks like. And Alchemy was this really interesting California label that I have a compilation from, but they had everybody on that label from these guys who seemed to be more from the metal scene, to the Melvins, to Virulence, who went on to become Fu Manchu, who were like a sludgy kind of hardcore band along the lines of Blast. Clown Alley was the name of one of the other bands on there. There's a couple of thrashy metal bands and a lot of other kinds of hardcore and like the beginning of sludge kind of stuff. So interesting label with an interesting pedigree, and a very, very good album. So check it out. I'm going to throw some clips in. I also got some records. Projections of a Stained Mind. Definitely a grail of mine, maybe a minor grail, if such a thing exists. It's kind of a contradiction in terms. Been wanting this forever. If you're a fan of the early 90s death metal stuff from Europe, particularly Scandinavia, you're probably aware of this. If not, pull it up on YouTube. I'll leave a link. It's a great compilation. There's a CD version that has a lot more tracks, almost twice as many songs. Some bands that don't appear on here, like Tiamat. They might have been Treblinka at that point. I don't remember. That band. Traumatic and a bunch of other ones. But this is like a who's who. As well as some hidden gem kind of bands that were second or third tier. And amongst all this Swedish death metal, a little band from Norway called Mayhem that were just starting to gain some buzz. Or had already been gaining buzz since the late 80s, but were really starting to gain steam right before all the drama happened that we all know about. Some of the only recordings with Dead appeared on the CD. On the LP, we just have Carnage. On the CD, there's Carnage and Freezing Moon. Also appearing on here are Entombed, first song on here, appropriately enough. Forsaken, which appears later on the Crawl EP. This is a different recording with LG Petrov, the original singer, and not the guy from Nirvana 2002, who are also on here. Morning. You got Merciless on here. You got Unleashed on here. Dismember, Sickening Art, a version that I don't think is on anything else. I listened to the demo song and the song from the LP, and neither of them sound like this version, so that's cool. Some weird band called Skull that feature a member of Morbid, but don't really sound like anything else on here. House of Usher, Therion, Grotesque. I mean, this is a fucking slab that I am very, very proud to own. But I want to break it down track by track. That's a long-term plan I have, to make a nice little pretty video looking at each song if it doesn't get booted immediately for copyright problems. We'll see. I'm going to try it out anyway. I feel like it'd be a fun thing to do, a little slideshow of the art and each track talking about, you know, aspects of each song, sound-wise and whatnot. Anyway, so I got that, and I'm happy about it. moving on, I got this Speed Kills. These were compilations that came out in the 80s. And they always had the who's who, what's best in speed and thrash metal. This is kind of a deceptive cover. It looks like it's all going to be, you know, bandana thrash, flipped up hat kind of stuff. There's nothing like that really on here, with the exception of Onslaught and Sacrilege, I guess, but the UK bands always had, for crossover, always had a different kind of flavor than the US ones. It was way more discharge and way less circle jerks. Regardless, this has Agent Steel going into a death song from Stream Bloody Gore, Unholy Grave. A Heathen song from their demo. You've got Possessed with Seance, the Post Seven Churches stuff, English Dogs, Eye of the Shaman, which is from their Tolkien thrash record. You got Battery of Doom, great track, side B. Death Angel, Mistress of Pain, one of the few songs I actually like by that band. You got Onslaught, Power from Hell. It's a great tune. Nuclear Assault, Cross of Iron. Holy Terror, Tomorrow's End. Holy Terror, classic stuff. Sacrilege, Insurrection, and then Dark Angel, Merciless Death, one of their best tracks, easily. So these are great compilations. I also have Speed Kills 2. I'll eventually pick up the first one at some point. All these little descriptions next to the songs, these little quotes. Seems very cheeky and British. It seems like that kind of Kerrang style writing. Possessed, Seance, the original Toy Boy thrash band, too fast for a DB to catch. I don't know what that means. Heathen, previously unreleased anthem, Frisco never sounded so good. Nuclear Assault, Cross of Iron, the ultimate speedcore band, NA, piss all over Anthrax. Like, that kind of sensationalist sort of metal journalism. I don't know, it's kind of funny. But, regardless, these comps aren't too bad. Most of it's pre-release material, if not all. So it's just kind of fun to have all on one LP. But they're a great listen. They're fun to throw on. I recommend them if you can track them down. I don't think any of them go for more than maybe 30 bucks on Discogs or eBay at any given point. And then I got some video games. And this is when I try to do game capture shit on my phone and see how terrible it looks. My lovely little arcade machine here that I've showed off before is starting to develop this thing, the old CRT tube. There's this black line at the top that keeps getting thicker, and man, is that a fucking bummer. So eventually I'm gonna have to get that fixed or replaced. Anyway, I bought a game called Holy Diver, and this is a real game. It's not a fan-made game, it's not a homebrew, it's not a hack. This was a real game that came out on Famicom in Japan in 1989, and this is its translated version. Some fans have released a couple different versions of this floating out there. I had to get the one with the black cartridge and the bootleg Dio art, of course. The original art was way more looking like a anime, JRPG, Final Fantasy kind of thing. This game's a lot of fun. It's very hard. It's almost a direct clone of Castlevania. So it's a side-scrolling game where you shoot fireballs as Randy Rhoads.
See you shoot up, see you take a hit, see your eyes roll and see you get hit. See you scam, see you getting high, rock you don't have good when you die. Addiction to disease.
Calls you Randy in it, so they didn't get sued or whatever. But there's a character named Randy, a character named Zack, Z-A-K-K, and a guy named Ozzy, who is their father. So if you like Castlevania and you like Blizzard of Oz and Dio, this is for you. This is another game. I'm not sure if it's a bootleg or not. This is a Kitz's Ring. It said on the eBay listing, original game chip, but the cartridge was damaged, so we had to replace it with this orange cartridge. I found that pretty suspect, but it was really cheap. With that, I don't really care if it's a bootleg or not. This is a Zelda clone. Kind of lukewarm Zelda clone. It's not bad. It's one of those top-down deals where you're shooting at monsters. It looks like Zelda. It's got the overhead view. But there's not a lot of exploring or figuring out puzzles. It's not open world. You don't go around one left, right, or how you please. You have to just go straight up over and over again. And I guess after a certain point, you beat it and it just keeps looping. But it's fun enough. You go around killing monsters. You get different types of swords and power-ups and projectiles, so that's a good time. A really good Zelda clone that adds a few new things to that kind of Zelda, first Legend of Zelda game template is this Crystallis game that I researched kind of thoroughly before I bought it, and I'm glad I did. It is very, very, very cool. You know, it has more of a role-playing sort of element to it than Legend of Zelda does. You go around exploring, you have to get clues from people in towns like you do in Final Fantasy 1 through 3. But all the fights are in real time. They're overheading. You have a cool power-up meter where if you hold down A, you can power up for a greater attack that involves like a projectile and then later a fireball and stuff like that. There's some cool puzzle solving elements. I'm pretty addicted. SNK was the game company that put this out back in the day. It's got a battery save. It's a long game, but I made some progress in it and I'm hooked. It's really cool. This is Alpha Mission. This is a nostalgic game for me. Picked this up at the local game store here in Salem. Also put out by SNK, it looks like. I loved this game as a kid. I had a copy of it for a long time. I don't know what happened actually to my recent copy of it, because I had it up until I moved here, but got scattered to the four winds. This was like a $4 or $5 game in town. It's fun. There's not much to it. It's an overhead space shooter, as you can imagine. You know, all those games that are basically like Galaga with a scrolling background, more or less. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people say it's too simple. Like a lot of those games, you die instantly if you get hit once, which is not good for me, because I'm not good at video games, but it's fun. Maybe you'll see some footage if I'm not feeling too lazy, maybe not. But that's it for right now. Stay tuned for more fun with me. I'm probably going to start working on that Projections of a Stained Mind video this weekend. Hopefully I'll have it for you next week. I have a few things that I got in the mail. Amongst the tape from Eli, I also got one of my favorite comedy albums, Patton Oswalt, Feeling Kinda Patton. Got some great jokes, along with Shut Up You Fucking Baby by David Cross. It's one of my favorite stand-up records of the early aughts or mid-aughts, whenever this came out. Especially the TiVo bit on this is fantastic. Use a couple of stickers, might as well show those off. Chaos Bringer. And in negative. Nero One Records. And Chaos Bringer are Russian, by the way. You don't hear as much about Russian bands as you do other scenes, so that's pretty cool. And this nice Conan the Barbarian pin. I'm not going to push it up to the camera because the focus never really works well, so instead, to send you off, I'll put a picture of Arnold right here. Alright, take care, have a good one.